Great. Welcome all. I am Karen Filipovich. I'm the director of the Montana Head Start Association. We are so excited to continue to host the Early Childhood Family Engagement webinar series. I'm going to introduce today's webinar expert for our session, Understanding Resistance, a Trauma-Informed Approach. And this is Teresa Nygaard. Teresa, I'm doing the short bio because she's done so much. Teresa is the owner and consultant for DragonFly406 Training and Consulting. She's a Montana ACE, or Adverse Childhood Experiences Master Trainer, and a national trainer for nurturing parent programs and Darkness to Light Stewards of Children. She's run Parenting Place. We are so thrilled to have you today. And Teresa, I am going to turn this over to you. Folks, this is a webinar. We do have the chat function enabled today, and we're really excited to see you. And please mute unless there's an option to unmute, because we really appreciate that. Thank you. Teresa?
Thanks, Karen. I appreciate it. Hi, everybody. I can see we've got people joining us as we speak. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And thanks so much for being here. I know this is part of your afternoon that. Okay, can everybody see that thumbs up if you can? Great, great. Okay, so I'm just going to jump in. Today's topic is understanding resistance, using a trauma-informed approach to family engagement. And I really want to do this justice. I think, being in social work myself, I've worked with lots of different populations where I've dealt with resistant families, one reason or another. There's a lot of different reasons, I think. And so, sorry, I'm going to move my. Yeah, it's so weird how you have like an idea of what's going to happen when you get your stuff on Zoom, and then you're shocked by the difference. So we're going to talk a little bit about understanding resistance and where that might come from, understanding more about trauma-informed care, and then we're going to have a starting place of being more self-reflective in all of this, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. So with that, I found an old picture, the ACE Master Trainer group from 2014, just to give you a little context about my background. I was lucky enough to be part of this group that learned from Dr. Anda and Laura Porter, who came to give this training back in 2014. And so I've had a passion for talking about brain science and trauma-informed care, adverse childhood experiences, since at least this point, maybe a little before. I'm also part of the Child Abuse Prevention Network of Montana as a board member. As Karen said, these other training backgrounds that I have, just absolutely love to bring awareness to all of this and to be part of the process of people learning on an ongoing basis about brain science and all that it influences for us. So that's a little context about where I come from. I like to start with perspective. So I feel like this is a good place to start because it's just the very beginning stages of what it means to be trauma informed, right? And to be trauma informed, some people talk about it as putting on this lens or this pair of glasses or something. I talk about it more as a mindset change or a new way of just being in the world with people. Because I don't think that it's something that we put on and take off. Not like you're a doctor and you walk into your office and you put on your stethoscope, and then at the end of the day, you take that off and go home. I think this is just a way of being and being trauma informed. It's really important and it's life-changing when it's something you integrate into all of your relationships. So it's very impactful. What I mean by that, I guess, is that having an understanding, and I think Brene Brown says this best, in order to empathize with someone's experience, you must be willing to believe them as they see it and not how you imagine their experience to be. And so I'm going to ask a few questions of you today, and I just want you to maybe think about your answers. Have you ever been in front of somebody who is talking about an experience that they had, and in a genuine and sincere way, you want to make a connection with them and you want to show them that they're not alone? It comes from a very genuine and sincere place, almost always. But you say, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, or oh, I know exactly what kind of experience you had. I know how that feels. How many of you have experienced that, either on the side of saying it to somebody or someone saying it to you? Think about that for a minute. And then I want you to think, if you were on the side of receiving that, how did it make you feel? I know it's in context with the relationship you have with that person. So if you have a really good relationship, it's your best friend, you probably have one way of feeling about it. If it's somebody you just met, you might have a different way of thinking about it or feeling about it when they say that to you. So one of the things that I do, because everyone has their own separate and personal perspective on every experience they have. Two people can go through almost identical experiences. You can be in the same car crash. Two people will walk away with very different perspectives on that same event and that same experience. So saying something like, I know exactly how you feel, or I know exactly what you're going through, doesn't necessarily make it true. You might imagine, like Brene says, you might imagine what that feels like, but you can't necessarily know for sure how they feel. So what I do is I try to refrain from saying that kind of thing, unless, like I said, the relationship is much deeper and you know each other very, very well. But especially in new relationships, I always try to lead with something more like, wow, that must have been really hard for you. Or I'm so sorry you had to go through that. You know, that maintains the, like, you're showing empathy, you're showing compassion for that person. You're not trying to diminish their experience in any way. You're still allowing them to have their own very personal experience that they're telling you about. And they don't have to share it with you because you haven't said, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. So you're allowing them to have that experience and to tell you about it. And that's still a connector and it's still a relationship builder, right? Because you're showing compassion, empathy, and understanding. So that's one of the biggest things that I like to start with, is the fact that we all have our own personal experiences, and allowing other people to have their own personal experiences is just another way of helping to strengthen that connection and help to build that initial relationship. Um, so one of the best things about being trauma informed or practicing from a trauma informed place is that it literally benefits everyone. We don't have to try to determine who has experienced trauma in their lives, what level of trauma. We don't have to do that. All of the responsibility of that is off your shoulders, because being trauma informed is good for everyone, whether they've experienced trauma or not. It's just practicing from a place where we have three things that always stand out for me when coming from a trauma informed place. Is that, number one, we know how critically important positive experiences are, right? They're so important that we want to, on purpose, create opportunities for those, right? And so that's number one. Number two is we come from a place where we have an increased level of empathy, compassion, and understanding for people because we know that all people bring different backgrounds to the table. We don't know always what people's histories are, what might influence their behavior or the way that they think about things. So we always lead with increased empathy, compassion, and understanding. That's never bad in any relationship, right? And the other thing we do is we start with curiosity. And I have a new favorite saying, and I can't give credit because I don't know exactly where it started, but I first heard it just a few months ago, and now I can't stop saying it. Um, be curious, not furious. That's my mantra. The older I get, the more furious I am about literally everything. And so I have to remind myself to not be furious about the little things or that people, can do things that might be annoying or whatever. I have to stop and I have to say, let's be curious. Like, what's driving this behavior? Why are people responding this way? So be curious, not furious. So love that. Um, and I will just also say, sorry, I have to move this little thing. Um, that the other place when we talk about coming from a trauma-informed place in our practice, our day-to-day practice, it really begins with self-awareness. I talked a little bit about self-reflection in the beginning, and I will just say that self-awareness is key. Um, I don't know how many of you feel like you are fairly self-aware. I'm one of those people that feel like I'm pretty self-aware. I know I think about things and how they might impact people before I say them, or I know how something might impact me. So I, make sure my environment is always more conducive to, me feeling better. Um, but Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score, says neuroscience research shows the only way we can change the way we feel is by becoming aware of our inner experience and learning to befriend what is going on inside ourselves. So if we know ourselves well enough so that we know some of our biases, we know some of our um, triggers, so to speak. We might know what our emotional state is at any given time. All of these things are essential for building authentic connections with people. And another thing that it does is helps us to avoid re-traumatizing other people. So we are more aware of how things might influence or impact someone, whether we are doing something or saying something. And so why this is important is because we are part of the equation, right? When in any relationship. So we're part of it. And so we have to know ourselves and know what we bring to the table in order to know how that's going to look in a relationship or how that might impact the way a relationship is built. For individuals might be healing from trauma, self-awareness is the foundation for recognizing how past experiences affect the present feelings and behaviors, leading to greater resilience and self-trust. So this is so important for people. And oftentimes we don't give a lot of thought to how things impact us, or how we might be feeling in certain situations. But the more we do, the more we set ourselves up for success and feeling better, right? So I do love the Stephen Covey quote too. We do not see the world as the world is, we see the world as we are. And part of that in our efforts to understand ourselves and to self-reflect, I think we have to be really open to our own history and understanding how that history might have impacted us in certain ways. We'll talk a little bit about brain science in a bit, but I say open to because I know that some people aren't necessarily very open to um, either understanding why or even recognizing that things in our history may have had an impact on us and the way we walk through the world right now, currently. I'll give you an example of that. So, in one of my parenting classes a long, long time ago, I had a young man who said to me, we were talking about corporal punishment and spanking as part of the curriculum. And he just announced in class, he said, I was spanked all the time as a kid and I turned out just fine. And I didn't say anything in class, but to give you context for where this happened, I was doing a class for the pre-release center. And so for me, it was a learning moment where I thought there are definitely people who, for whatever reason, can look at their history and not be open to the fact that it could potentially impact the way they are living in the world today, how they respond, how they act, how they react. Um, so I just tell you that as a way of like illustrating how being open to it and being more curious, curious is such a great word, being more curious about how the things in our history may have impacted us in our lives and how we respond to things and how we look at things. We all have a different worldview based on our early experiences in life, and it influences the way we connect with people. And to explain that a little better is on one hand, one end of the spectrum, I should say, you have maybe some brain architecture, a person whose brain architecture is built on maybe a mean and dangerous world. Maybe their needs were not met. Maybe they couldn't trust people. There are a lot of things that didn't work out well, a lot of negative experiences in their life. And so their brain architecture is built on that mean and dangerous world. The other end of the spectrum, you might have somebody whose brain architecture is built on the world being very safe, people being very trustworthy, needs have been met all the time. So you have very different brain architecture, right? You have very different worldviews. People are looking at the world very differently. And so when you bring people like that together to create a relationship, whether it's within a school system, youth programming, whether you're working with families in a system or not, if your worldview is very different than someone else's, you have to be aware of that and you have to understand how your worldview might be different than theirs. And you have to be accepting of the fact that their reality isn't the same as yours. So you have this worldview, world is very people are trustworthy, the world is very good, and people are generally great. And then this other person has the opposite sort of worldview. How do you navigate finding commonality and building connection so that you can build a relationship there? There are definitely ways to do that. And a lot of it comes from your openness, your self-awareness, and your ability to be curious. Okay. So those are tools. Those are actual tools we can use at our disposal. And so with that, finding my mouse here, I think we have to just do some self-reflection, kind of figure out where are we on the baseline, of self-awareness, and then do some work. Like I am continually, like I said, I feel like I'm a fairly self-aware person, but I'm continually in situations where I walk away going, oh my gosh, why did I say it like that? Or I wonder how that impacted this person because I just wasn't thinking about the conversation we were having, or So we're not going to get it 100%. But we can practice as much as possible and get really good at being as self-aware as possible. So keep striving. Well, let's see here. Always have to move my little. Trauma-informed care is basically impossible without self-awareness. And talking about some of the things we already have, without that self-awareness, we tend to become more easily triggered by things because we're not really aware of what triggers us or why or how. And so we can be triggered much easier. And with that comes, more dysregulation. Your brain just kind of senses, something's not right. Maybe we react adversely to something and we start to dysregulate a bit. Obviously, when we're more dysregulated, there is more of a lack of self-awareness that happens. And we tend to either unconsciously or unintentionally use actions and words that maybe we normally wouldn't, but because we're dysregulated, that sort of happens. So as you can see, the more self-awareness we have, the more that is able to help us. We use it as a tool. Again, there are so many tools out there that we have at our disposal, and this one is one that we can use to help us remain calm and regulated. And when we do that, we make better decisions. We're able to access better and deeper understanding of not only what's happening within us, but what's happening around us as well. And what this leads to then is it helps us also to help regulate other people. Again, I think some of these things just aren't talked about enough, but who's heard of co-regulation? I know everybody's got their camera off, but just a quick question. I'm sure most of you heard of co-regulation. Co-regulation is another tool that we have that when we use it purposely, thoughtfully, we can really change the course of interactions sometimes. You've seen this probably in relation to children's behavior. There's a number of different graphics that say when their storm meets our calm, co-regulation occurs. And simply put, if we are using, that self-awareness to understand when our emotions are getting, a little out of control or we're being triggered by something, we're using that as a tool ourselves to self-regulate, keeping ourselves calm in a situation where someone else is becoming dysregulated, whether it's a child or a parent. And there is more opportunity for that person who's dysregulated to come back to a state of calm, more so than to continue escalating when your energy is very calm and kind of conducive for them to de-escalate. So that's the tool we have at our disposal, is remaining calm and helping to co-regulate parents, children, friends, family members, the whole nine yards. We can do that by purposely. And I always say on purpose. We have to do so many of these things on purpose, because when people say, oh, it just happened that way, we have to do more of this on purpose. Whether it's talking with children, use co-regulation on purpose. Practice it, and you'll definitely see some differences. The things that go along with this, and I'll just explain. As far as human behavior goes, it's natural for us when people start to become dysregulated. We tend to want to know why. We tend to want to know what's going on, what happened, where, and two words that I just want, this is your mantra: minimize talking. We have to minimize talking at a place where people are starting to dysregulate, because oftentimes I don't know if you've all heard of the hand model of the brain, and where it shows you can flip your lid when you get triggered, or the amygdala sends out the signal, alert. So if somebody's becoming dysregulated, you run the risk of them not being able to have a conversation with you, because that part of the brain that's responsible for logical and rational thought and capable of communication, in a rational way, um, can become disconnected or offline, as they say. So if that goes offline, there's little chance that you're going to be able to have a conversation with somebody anyway. So set your expectations lower. Minimize talking. It'll help you, because the expectation is there won't be a conversation necessarily. If you need to, you can help identify emotions. Short things verbally might be helpful. Labeling feelings like you seem anxious, or is this bothering you, or how can I help? Something very short, and then no expectation necessarily for a big response. Um, those kinds of things are very important to remember. What it comes down to then is you have the use of calm body language. If you just maintain, relaxed posture and soothing tone, this can help in all kinds of situations. Again, this is co-regulating. You're modeling how to regulate, because you might be practicing some coping mechanisms. Now, you can model and you can offer some coping strategies. You can model, let's say a child is escalating, becoming dysregulated, and you can say something like, when I'm feeling upset, it helps me to breathe deeply, or take 4 deep breaths. You can say something very simple like that, and that's modeling a coping mechanism. For offering, because I think that's the other thing, is people think, oh, my coping mechanisms work for me, and so they'll work for you. Sometimes people have different coping mechanisms, and they don't always work the same for everyone. So you can offer some other things. Can I show you, and this is obviously not at the peak of dysregulation, but during calm downs, part of that, you could offer, can I show you some deep breathing exercises, or would you like to see some of these? Or, you can offer that in a way that is respectful. If people have their own coping mechanisms, you're respecting that as well. So these are just a couple of things. And so with co-regulation, again, it's a great skill that we have. And I think that if we do it more in a purposeful manner, we will see a lot more opportunities, I think, for connection and relationship building. So there are some other ways to support co-regulation. We talked a little bit about self-reflection already. So we obviously have to be regulated ourselves in order to support others. So that's number one. Interactions, I think, finding opportunities, and they might be spontaneous and they might be planned, to have respectful conversation, or maybe even nonverbal communication with parents and children. Having those interactions, again, on purpose, like taking the opportunity when you see a child playing with something, and you go, I'm going to make this a positive interaction, and go have a couple of positive, whether it's conversation or a question or something like that. Create those opportunities, and then you'll be able to identify those that are more spontaneous too. And you'll be able to say, I'm going to take this opportunity to, have a positive interaction with this person. The environment, also a place where you can set up success, because when you're talking about environments, whether it's for parents or children, you're trying to create an environment that feels safe, that is filled with predictability and consistency. And so one of the things that I was thinking too is like for parents, especially when you invite parents to come in to meet with you, or you set up something where the family has to come in, or so predictability and consistency of expectations is so important that if you're sending a letter, you're doing a text message or a email, perhaps, when you reach out and invite to a school function, to a meeting, to whatever it is, set a couple of expectations. We're getting together for a school function. This is what you can expect, and list. The kids will be doing this. Parents will be sitting here. And it seems simple, but sometimes simple is good. Sometimes just setting a couple of expectations, what the parents can expect, can create a level of comfort that wouldn't have been there normally. And so when you do that every time, parents become way more comfortable because they know what's going to happen. They know what to expect. So that's an opportunity as well. And then activities, just everyday interactions that we have. What are the things that work well? What are the things that aren't working? As you have a relationship with kids or adults, you can have conversation about, what are the things that work well when it comes to supporting you, or you supporting your child. What are the things that we can improve on? What are the things that aren't helpful? Those kinds of activities can be very helpful, I think. All right. Trauma-informed approach. I like to spend a little bit of time talking about the 4 R's and the core principles, because this really sets the stage for the importance of being trauma-informed and really understanding what that's all about. When we talk about being trauma-informed, aside from everything that we've talked about up to this point, we're talking about continual like education or exploration of what it means to be trauma-informed. There are a lot of things about brain science that would be helpful to know. There are a lot of things about building relationships that would be helpful to know. So it's a continual seeking out of new information, or at least information that you don't have already. So number one is realize, and that is important because we're talking about realizing that anyone that you might come in contact with could potentially have a trauma history. Parents and children alike, friends, family members, anybody that you come in contact with could potentially have a trauma history. What's important about this is that the trauma-informed approach that you're using, you realize that, but you don't have to know who they are specifically. This really benefits everybody. So there's no downside to being trauma-informed and practicing from that place for everything that you do. But you realize that a lot of people might be coming into the relationship with some history around trauma or adversity. You recognize some of the signs and symptoms of trauma. Now, again, this will not get this 100%, because there sometimes aren't a lot of signs and symptoms. People are really good at adapting and compensating. So it's not on you to recognize everything, but you do enough exploration around this to know what some of the signs and symptoms might be, and understanding that even though they might be subtle, there's a potential that somebody might have a trauma history. We respond in a way that includes everything from increased empathy, understanding, and compassion to curiosity. And we're responding in a way that's respectful to all people, no matter what their history is. but also recognizing that you're doing it from a place where if somebody has been impacted by trauma in some way, that you're doing it in a compassionate and empathetic way, and I guess respecting their history. You're also, through all of the self-awareness process and the self-reflection that you've done, you're also really understanding how the way you respond is also reducing the opportunity for re-traumatizing and re-triggering people. You're doing everything possible to resist that. So those are the 4 R's. We have some core principles that this is all based on, and you're probably familiar with these as well. But we start with a foundation of safety. And I really focus on safety a lot because this one is sometimes misunderstood. Sometimes, people get the idea that I had a teacher once tell me, "Oh, all my kids in my classroom they feel safe." And I said, "Well, that is great. How do you accomplish that?" And she said, "I tell them they're safe." And I chuckle now. It was admirable that she would tell her students that they were safe. I love that. The chuckle for me comes from a place where it's not necessarily about telling somebody that they're safe. It's about someone feeling that they're safe. It has to be a felt sense of safety. And so if you and I go into a room together and I tell you that you're safe, that's great. I'm helping to alleviate any fears or um, hesitancy maybe that you have being there. But if your body doesn't, if it doesn't feel safe, like your brain doesn't believe what I say, your brain believes how your body feels in that situation. So there's definitely this misunderstanding around what safety means in some cases. So it's a felt sense of safety, and that comes from consistency in all of these other things. It comes from a sense of people knowing that they can rely on you, that you're always going to be there, that you do what you say and say what you do, that you mean what you say, trust around that. That all leads to a more felt sense of safety for people. So that's foundational. We think about trustworthiness and transparency. Um, I like to say, so trust is one of those things that can help make you feel more safe and secure. And take a second now to think about a relationship in your life that you're very close, like it's a very close relationship, best friend or partner, somebody. Um, what are the components of that relationship that make you want that to never end? What are the components of that relationship that are so important and valuable to you? I'd like you to take just a second and put something in chat. You can focus on just one thing if you want. What are the things that are most valuable to you in that relationship? I'm going to call on Karen to help me. I don't know if I can see what's in the chat.
Just invite people to add to the chat. Being heard and trust, communication, transparency,
Great.
safety,
Awesome.
trust, non-judgmental, listens, honesty, mutual trust, shared interests, laugh together.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm just going to say, for the record, these are some of the things that everybody wants to have in a relationship, right? No matter what the relationship is, colleague at work or a family member, doesn't necessarily have to be your bestie. But these are the kinds of things that everybody wants in a relationship. And as you can see on this list, there a lot of those are here. Um, so peer support becomes a really valuable tool also in helping to enhance relationships, because when people feel like they are sharing experience with somebody, lived experience is one of those things that's so valuable. And again, I don't think we bring people together enough with lived experience to help, decide policies and decide how programs look and systems and all of that. But when people come together to support each other in similar circumstances, that can be very, very valuable and hugely supportive. Collaboration, two things come to mind that we use a lot when we talk about collaboration is everyone wants to have a voice and a choice, right? I know in some systems we have limitations on how much collaboration can happen, which is, kind of a sad thing in some ways, but everybody wants to have a voice and a choice when it comes to the the work that's being done. So if you're creating a relationship with a family around their child's education, um, parents who have a voice and a choice in all of that will be much more invested, obviously. So it's definitely worth, again, doing on purpose. Empowerment, another place where when we have an understanding of how people's backgrounds and histories impact the way they are today, I think of how so many places throughout people's history they can be disempowered. They can have their own personal power diminished or ignored. And so oftentimes we're looking at people who are they're not really understanding the kind of power that they do have because they're not allowed to really use it in many ways. And so we're looking for opportunities when you are looking for ways to build that relationship or help secure that connection with families. What are the opportunities? What are the situations that you might have available where parents can really use their power and make some decisions um, and help to guide the direction of the work that you're doing? I think those are some really important questions to ask. What are the opportunities and the specific situations where you can really do that on purpose as well? And humility and responsiveness, I think this really is one of those places where we want to recognize, acknowledge, and honor people and culture, and we want to be inclusive, and we want to make sure that everybody feels a sense of belonging, and that we understand and recognize that a lot of things may influence that. Understanding historical trauma is a good place to start. Um, and so I think there's a lot that we can do. And again, I will just say that some of these slides come from a much, much bigger presentation. And so if you're interested in delving more into any of this, there's opportunity to do that for sure. So with these core principles, this is kind of your starting point. What do you do with all of this? This is a lot, actually, when you stop to think about it, a lot to deal with. And what we're trying to do is take that parent relationship to a partner relationship, right? And in a partnership, both people have the ability to shape what that looks like. Um, and in a relationship, we understand that they evolve, they grow, they change, and they're not built in one visit, right? No relationship is ever built in one visit or one encounter. So we totally understand that there's stages to building relationships and engagement. And the reality of that is that we have opportunity every single time we have an encounter and an interaction. So using thoughtful and purposeful ways, we can help to guide that. I'm going to do a poll again with maybe Karen's help here. I guess I can. Oh, one of the things I forgot to tell y'all before we started, and I told Karen, I'm going to say this at the beginning. Let's see, there is gosh, I can't see it on mine. There's polls. There's a resource tab. Karen, do you see the resource tab on yours?
Not in this mode, but I will make sure to send the resources to everyone who's here today.
Okay. If you have on the bottom of your screen, there's a resource tab. If you click that, you will be able to see links to a few websites and resources. And then there's also a few documents. I just wanted to make sure you knew that. But we're going to do a quick poll here. Let me.
And the resources are, if you go to the three dots, punch them, you'll see resources in the list to get to them.
Okay. Karen said I'm using all of the things that haven't been used before. So this is first opportunity to do it. Okay. So we're going to do what factors influence the type of relationship you have with parents and families. So I'm going to launch that. Can you let me know if you can see it? Okay. All right. I'll give you just a little bit here to click what factors influence the type of relationship you have with parents and families. Okay. Okay, it looks like we're kind of at the end here. Okay. Can you see the results? I can't see the results. Karen, can you read what the
Yeah, we're pretty as a group. Our biggest answer is all of the above. 77% of us did that. Respect, then communication, trust, and you all can see this too. Then flexibility, personal awareness, attitudes towards the child or children. I loved how so many answered all of the above.
Yes. Because really, that's really it. Everything influences the type of relationship you have with the families. So very interesting, and thank you for participating in that. My next slide is more about who benefits from family engagement. And I know we're winding down. I swear I just looked at the clock and it said 20 minutes, and now we're at like 45. Who benefits from family engagement? Obviously, the children all benefit from, improved social emotional development, academic success, increased confidence, and so much more comes from successful family engagement. Families benefit from it. There's stronger relationships both inside and outside the families. They have increased social networks and support, more maybe empowerment happening because they get to do more decision making. For us as professionals and educators, we're looking at, we have better communication with families. We have better understanding of their needs. So that really helps enhance the work that we're able to do, improved classroom environment. And then when we start looking at a little bit more macro level, communities benefit obviously from those healthier relationships that are happening and better support systems all around. The community itself is healthier. And then on the bigger macro level, our early childhood and youth programming, all of that benefiting in a way that We have improved program outcomes because of the successful family engagement and more involvement. And then that leads to sustainability, which is big for all of our programming. So these are just some of the ways that we all benefit from more successful family engagement. And with that, I'm going to do one more poll here really quick. This one is about, what do you struggle with most when it comes to family engagement? This is like just on a personal level. What do you struggle with most? Oops. Launch. Okay. Give you a little bit to answer those. And then if you have something that's not on here, feel free to write that in the chat as well. I realize, Karen, now that I'm looking at the answers, I want to ask a whole bunch of questions. Okay.
Always.
Yes. Wow. Are you seeing one of the biggest one is time constraints? Okay, I've ended the poll. Isn't that interesting? Thank you for answering that. I appreciate that. I think this is good feedback. And then did we get any in the chat?
So we got one, lack of participation when you put events together for them. So
Yes.
thank you.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you again. Really great feedback here. Okay, with that, I feel like I need to leave a little time for some questions here. I'm going to share with you. So, family engagement is one of the strongest predictors of a child's success in school. I think that's kind of just a statement, but I think we all look at, like, from a professional standpoint, what some of the feedback might be around how to enhance or improve family engagement. And I looked at some parent feedback. And so these were some of the things that I received from a parental perspective. And some of them made me cry. I have to be honest. Parents want to be respected as their child's first and best teacher. Now, however you feel about that, I think every one of us as a parent just wants to be acknowledged as a very important person, first and best teacher for their child. And a way that we can do that that's fairly easy would be to ask whenever we're having interactions with parents is like, so what are you all doing at home that works really well for this or that? And how can I incorporate that into what we do here? Or is there something you'd like me to, incorporate into what we do on a day-to-day basis? Some simple questions, and I think it's just really asking for the expertise. Parents want their families to be valued as a family and not just defined by the child receiving services. This one really kind of hit me. Yeah, we oftentimes put people in boxes, they're WIC or they're, and I think changing that language, they are a very valuable family that we have an opportunity to work with. They also are receiving services. Parents want us to understand that they have the same hopes and dreams that all parents have for their children. This one also made me a little teary-eyed. Yeah, I think every one of us has, high hopes and big dreams for our children, and maybe we forget that sometimes, or maybe parents feel like we forget that sometimes. Both can be true. It's important to parents that their child is viewed through a strengths-based lens that recognizes them as extraordinary children. again, I may have shed a tear reading this one because I think we all, as parents, want our children to be recognized as the amazing humans that they are. And I'm not sure that that happens all the time, in different settings or systems. And so when we can do it, I think it's awesome. So with that, I think I just want, let's see, to share one more thing with you before I open for questions. The language we use is really important. Our brains are designed for the world that we see and experience from birth, and we all have adaptations to that. This is the shortest I've ever done this slide. A brain can be built on the world being mean and dangerous, and a brain can be built on, the architecture can be built on the fact that a world is nurturing and kind, and everything in between. But these two differences create the need for different adaptations. And with those adaptations, sometimes we look at the brain architecture that's adapted to a mean and dangerous world as negative. And that's where we see, children maybe being labeled as they're misbehaving and they have bad behaviors. What I want to think about is some of these adaptations actually, if you thought about them as superpowers, because the brain is designed to be far more observational, quicker to make decisions, heightened sensitivity to, threat cues. This is a very simplified version. But all of these things can lead themselves to a way of being a superpower. The brain's main function is to keep us alive. So survival is key, and the brain will do what it needs to do in order to make that happen. Just a quick example. If a person with the brain architecture built on a mean and dangerous world, and I, whose brain is built on a nurturing and kind world, walk down the same street, we walk a block, we get to the end of that street, and someone asks us both, did you see the guy in the alley? What color was the car that was parked at the end of the block? Who was, in the store window, and what were they, what was for sale? The person with the brain built on a mean and dangerous world would probably be able to tell you everything accurately. My brain probably didn't see a darn thing. That's not the way my brain was designed. So I just say that to tell you, I think language matters, and I think the way we look at some of these things matters. And so with that, I will leave you. Got this and other resources in that resource tab, but I'm going to open it to questions in case you have any.
And please feel free to unmute or put it in chat. Thanks.
Any questions at all?
Nope.
Well, I hope that was helpful. That's my goal, was to provide at least a little something that was helpful as you move forward. Family engagement is a challenge always, and for many different reasons. The poll was illustrative of that. Lots of different reasons why it can be more challenging. So again, I'm available if you'd like to reach out. My information, my email is down here. You can also reach me through Karen. And so just let me know.
Yes, and I just wanted to check because I see someone has come on camera. Did you have a question or a comment that you'd like to share? Okay. All right. Well, thank you again for coming to Understanding Resistance Today with Teresa Nygaard. And we appreciate you coming to the Early Childhood Family Engagement webinars. The last one is November 13th. Thanks a lot and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.